game that really turned the tide and really, once again, just claimed their authority over their opponents. And we'll see how exactly Griffin got the job done. And this was right around just an E skill being just clicked up by Lehens on that Braum, so giving that shield for that level 1 just really allows that basically any type of CC opportunity that Kramer tries to bring onto himself, onto his opponent, basically neglected every single time that Lehens just sends out the E, and you see that pure lane dominance as soon as from level 1 and onwards. And that's just a little bit of difference in terms of situational skill clicks. You would usually think that maybe the Q will be a lot more suitable for the Braum in that level 1 phase, but Lehens once again 200 IQ there just to make sure he has that lane dominance for the earlier phase and gets that bot lane off to a good start. We knew that just throughout the game that Swain had really no impact for the entire game number 1, and it just all could have started with the little things out there, and the Lehens showing why he is still one of the best. And that all went through a big hurdle for Afreeca that was trying to get the lead on towards and trying to cover their advantage and see what they could do. And we're going back to the bot lane for another highlight, and we're going to see what we're going to see. Just Kramer just casually clearing out the lane and just trying to push the lane forward, but you see that the pushing advantage was always towards the side of Griffin, and with the Varus it does a very good job. And you also really saw basically with any time that Afreeca bot lane, those two guys were trying to recall back to lane and recall back to base and trying to get back to lane. That was right when the lane was already past them, and they had to really cover their disadvantages most of that game. And once again, this is right here. See Lehens going to the Ghost for that summon spell change, and see just rapidly rushing in with the Olaf and even the Gnar helping out in the back end. That just really went to a really easy gank, and Lehens once again showing the situational decision making became very crucial for the success of the bot lane for Griffin in game 1, and we saw many instances of how that really flourished into a potential Griffin victory the more and more the time went on. And it all started from the early game, and really went to a lot of credits over to the support player over from Griffin, and really was a close matchup altogether. I'm sure the fans had reacted quite heavily to what we thought would have been an easy matchup for both teams coming into this one, because both teams had such high expectation for everyone. And now we are looking at Griffin still at the top of that implication of how good they actually are. We're gonna slowly figure out one game after another, as a potential game 3 could end it out if they do get a clean sweep, but otherwise we might just see a kind of a fighting back for Afreeca in this game 2. But let's go for basically a one-line summary. And this is a wing spread. Griffin is what he said. Very clean one-line summary from Bito. First time in the season, and it's been an entire season just passed on. Today's the last day, but finally we get a clean one-line summary. I'm very proud of him, and that's going to be me passing it back to you guys, and hopefully we get a clean game number 2 to suit just that match.
Thank you very much, Joel. Glad you're excited about finally getting a good one-line summary. And let's have a look at who our MVP is going to be. Of course, it's going to be Tarzan. The guy was a beast on the Olaf.
Bito needed the postseason for his postseason buff. This man didn't need a postseason buff.
No.
The regular season was very kind to Tarzan, right up there with Score as our best performing jungler in Korea. 5-0-3, and the reason why I voted for Olaf wasn't the fact that he got the first 3 kills and was 3-0-0, but then there was that long lull in this game. Very long time where it seemed like Afreeca had just scaled the way back in, and yet Tarzan, on a champion that traditionally falls away, was able to actually find a way to take the game by the horns and actually win it. Going for the BF sword straight into Elder for the faster speed there, adjusting his build and again to the situation. It's very tricky to show much in the late game as Olaf, and yet Tarzan was able to do that in this particular game number 1.
However, I mean, the Elder Drake was still a 50-50, but good smite timing from Tarzan as well to guarantee that they had that advantage, and they never let go of it as the game continued. And this was honestly Afreeca without any other options at this point in the game.
And I would say that 50-50 is at a time when Griffin was without few options. I would say you just let the game extend another 15-20 minutes with no action, they probably lose. And A 50-50 is worth taking if you look at the end of state of the game and think, well, if we don't get it, we probably lose anyway.
Exactly. I think you're absolutely right. I wasn't saying that it was necessarily a bad thing. I was just saying that his smite timings were certainly on point. Spirit needing to find his. As we move into game number 2, looks like no subs, nothing like that. No Mowgli going to come in. Not going to see aiming. Not going to see Rather either. As both teams keeping their squads together, moving into this second match.
Ahmet and Zephyr, the drafting coaches of Afreeca, smiling in the booth as well. There is still so much League of Legends to be played today. Long game number 1. Very interested to see if game number 2 follows a similar cadence. So far, again, we spoke about how Griffin, in best of 3s, have been pretty inflexible. They've rolled with what works, which is what most teams do, but they've rolled with what didn't work many times as well. So let's see how they approach game number 2. Do want to notice, guys, it is dynamic side selection today. In game number 1, Griffin chose red side. Afreeca Freecs, who surprised us with their red side priority against Kingzone and played that entire series on red side, will pick red side for game number 2.
And Griffin are going to ban away their own champions that were successful in game number 1, taking them off the board here.
Noticeable that Afreeca Freecs will be banning away the Aatrox. We saw Aatrox first pick into no power in game number 1, second least damage in the game. One support did less than the Aatrox. The support did more, which lets you know that Aatrox didn't do too much. They don't want to give Aatrox over to Griffin either. But Talia fell through picks and bans in game number 1. Griffin would love to ban away more of the threatening champion pool from Tucson and Spirit. To me, those are the two that you want to target the most. And they'll stick with Tucson. That is the pretty standard ban of the Rakan against Afreeca Freecs.
Well, Tahm Kench still available as we move to the very end of this draft. Going to be banned away here by the Afreeca Freecs, but it means, like you say, Talia available once again.
Do you first pick Varus is the question I asked Griffin, because they prized it away in game number 1, and Afreeca love red side flex pick of Varus. It's also the super high KDA coming through from Kramer. So against this particular team, rather than a power level pick like Zoe, I would really like something like the Varus. The Alistar is another one you could try to prize away. Something they've done before, pick for Lehends. So will not be Varus Alistar left open, but the Swain is left open if Afreeca Freecs want it, and both Predator junglers that Spirit has been focusing on, the Olaf and the Gragas, are available.
Gragas, of course, a flex pick as well into multiple roles here for the Afreeca Freecs, so it makes a lot of sense to grab this one away if they do decide to go with it. I feel like Gragas Varus is standing out like a bit of a sore thumb for the first round for the Afreeca Freecs, but we'll see what they decide to go with.
Gragas Yasuo. A
Ooh,
pretty tasty
option,
duo.
yeah.
The Yasuo here between Chovy and Kuro, two very high priority Yasuo players, is something both these teams have to think about. Would be a first round pick, like you mentioned, the Gragas Varus would be the more obvious choice, so return of the Predator Gragas coming through from Spirit. We're on patch 8.15, so the Electrocute nerfs and the other cheap shot nerfs are not there on this patch. I think Griffin will stick with Predator junglers, and they do. This is a more conspicuous time, Atlas, because Trundle is available and looked over by Tarzan.
Yeah, completely. And now Griffin, do they decide to lock in something like the Ashe into the Varus that's seen a bit of success, or do they pick up that Yasuo like you were talking about?
Kind of insane to go from 0 games of Varus and Ashe into Varus into Ashe in this series.
That would be a bit weird.
So first game of the Varus. This would be an LGD special over here.
It's been something that he's playing in solo queue as well. Viper has been spamming these ones. I actually saw it most recently in the Oceanic Pro League yesterday.
So this is a big pick for Y4 on LGD, and it's a very big pick into specifically champions like the Tahm Kench and the Varus in particular. Varus wants to load up behind the minions in queue. That's usually also terrain where you can get a lethality queue from a lethality stacking Misfortune to hit through. So it's something different for the LCK, but this is going to be Viper jumping on the Misfortune AD carry to try to deal with the Varus. And if it's lethality, he's going to feel real good.
And this is the absolute opposite of what you really want into a Misfortune lane as well. Picking up the Shen here as the final pickup in the first round for the Afreeca Freecs, because that doesn't offer very much lane presence. And that's exactly what Misfortune has. I mean, the first 20 minutes of the game are exactly her domain.
But Gragas also has one of the easiest on-demand interrupts of the Misfortune ultimate.
True.
The lethality build is basically, I dominate lane, and then my ult is pretty big. That's what you do. You don't really do too many other things. You can also build a Storm Razor later, like we saw from the Varus, so it is pretty typical of lethality Varus, your expectations when, if you're a viewer unfamiliar with the latest builds on the Misfortune. Understandable.
Yeah,
we'll leave that to one side. We can return to the Misfortune when we get into game. Looking at the bans here, we are once again targeting the fallback champions of Sword. Will we just see Gnar versus GP another game in a row?
Well, Yasuo going to be taken away here by the Afreeca Freecs, probably working out whether they wanted to pick it or not at this point in time. Zoe once again, I mean, she wasn't looked at in game 1 and still hasn't been considered in game number 2.
Let's talk about the heads-up nature of this GP ban. Afreeca Freecs, Keen has been basically a god on every champion. The Gnar is one that he hasn't really performed on. He's been okay, but the Gnar hasn't been a big pick for Afreeca. You know what I think Keen wants to do? I think Keen wants to pick Jax into Gnar. The Gnar is the obvious one for Sword to pick up. When Kingzone played Afreeca, they actually banned Jax second round against Keen in particular. So that's kind of the mind game I think's going on here. It could also be just a Gragas in a tank matchup if Sword goes on to a top lane tank in the end.
Well, where is Chovy going to go? Because we've spoken about his champion pool a lot. The Gnar, exactly what we were expecting
of course,
out of Sword. But what does Chovy do now? Because the Orianna is sort of... That's the option that he would theoretically go towards if we're looking at his most played, things like that, and it's okay.
You worry about it though, because it's kind of about Wombo. It's can we get a Shockwave and also a Misfortune, otherwise, ooh. So you can understand it's a good laning matchup against the Zoe. Let's see what they'll prefer here. They will just go Ori anyway. I think this does make things difficult because one cast to disengage people and things can get messed up in the execution very easily.
But if they pick something like the Vel'Koz instead, then that's more
Here's another way you can attack the Gnar.
Oh, Jesus, yeah, certainly the way to do it. The Quinn, you've seen it out of Keen already. Another option is the Camille. He's got lots of counter picks that he can play with.
We'll see if they want to go for it. They're deciding between the two. The Ignite Summoner's taken, so it's going to be the Quinn. Straddles the line a little bit more. Not going to be a cannon or something like that here. That was banned away. They're going to go attacking top side into trying to wreck mid lane. When you see the Orianna, who can do very well in extended laning phase against Zoe, if you can just get to level 6, roam from top to mid multiple times, and take that Orianna turret, things can really fall into place. Keen coming off an MVP performance on the Quinn in the wildcard match.
Yeah, this is going to be a really rough matchup for Sword, but Tarzan has got the Olaf once again. We saw him able to get that double kill very early in the first game and get Griffin into a decent position. We had question marks around what Griffin had put together that game as well. This time around, it certainly is there for Chovy. The 40% win rate Orianna hasn't been his most impressive champion, but it's been fallback when he's had bans thrown at him, when he's had picks taken away from him. Can he prove to us that this is something they wanted to go with instead of it just being his comeback pick?
And these comps are really fun to cast because it's so clear what both teams want to do. Quinn's never going to be there in a 5v5 team fight unless she's flanking. Very much going to be about the strong siege core that the Varus provides while Quinn is off split pushing. Meanwhile, Griffin looks at the time when Quinn is split pushing and says, if we can get that right Alistair-Ori combo, they all die instantly, and then we profit. So it's going to be so fun watching those little moments, execution heavy. Is going to be both sides. Quinn, so hard to pull off competitive play compared to a dominant performance in solo queue. And a Wombo comp, it looks great when it's working. It looks silly when it falls behind.
Certainly does, but the damage dealers on the side of the Afreeca Freecs are relatively stationary, apart from that of the Quinn. We'll see whether Griffin's going to be able to get this comp to work as well as they got the first one to in the late game. Let's get into game 2. Afreeca fans, so incredibly loud. Remember, guys, if the Afreeca Freecs win this series, they are going to Worlds. That is a guarantee, because they'll either win LCK or have the most champion points, because KT will be already going to Worlds after the win.
And if Griffin win, they're in the final, which already is a story. That means they are one step away from the true royal road of winning the LCK with 6 rookies and a rookie coach in your first ever split in the LCK. But importantly, they are not locked into Worlds because they don't have circuit points from spring season. They're not going to be able to make it. They would be the final boss in the gauntlet if they were to lose the final, and Afreeca would go anyway, seeing this historical pick here. 2017 spring, good old Sangyun, who likes the one-offs, jumping on the Misfortune that day. Already mentioned it in Champ Select if you're joining us late or on the VOD. This is once again going to be Comet, just like in game number 1 on the Varus from Viper. It is a lethality Misfortune played a lot by LGD's Y4, who was also guilty of the bot lane Orianna in the LPL. Seeing some play, it's specifically picked into Varus as an AD carry and very strong against Tahm Kench as well. Ability to poke him when he's trying to open up with his Q is what you can match there. And notice that Kramer is not going for a full lethality build. He is going for the much more normal lethal tempo. Still going to be great poke options for Viper.
Certainly feeling a bit of the pressure, though, because he's gone Resolve secondary on his more attack speed-based Varus, which certainly has been his favorite.
Oh, you don't go Resolve secondary and that lethality Q hits you for 700 damage. You just exit lane as you enter it. So a lot of respect being shown there, but nice for you to point it out, Atlas. That is a nice little gamesmanship choice against someone who has so much lane presence, whether it's support or AD carry in the Misfortune.
Yeah, if you haven't seen Misfortune or played against Misfortune for a while, you can sometimes make the mistake. I certainly have in solo queue when she lands a double up and you just die.
You think you're going to dodge the ult and then you forget the Q is just going to bounce onto you and kill you before the ult even comes online.
It's almost like you use a zoning bullet time.
Is a Doran's Ring start as well, just for mana sustain. Coming through from the Misfortune. Was an old pick on Jhin, of course, people will remember.
Also, Make It Rain being AP-based as well means that you can get a little bit more harassment, as we saw already utilized. Chovy playing this lane out very nicely.
Has AP scaling. There's all little reasons that incentivizes some champions like Jhin and Misfortune who do try to get lane control. And people will look back at game number 1, and the final build, right, was Comet with the lethal tempo build of Rage Blade and Blade the Ruin King, and say, well, why did he even go for Comet? The choice of Misfortune with Comet and Doran's Ring, we don't know what it will provide in the late game, but it's there for lane priority. It's there to have advantage over the Varus in the 2v2 laning phase, and it's there for specific reasons. It's there for a specific timing. For the first 25 to 30 minutes, the Misfortune will have immense value if you go this build path, and sometimes that's enough. The marksman doesn't always have to be there to hit 6 items and crit tanks. That's not always what marksmen are for, and Viper has been one of the prototypes of that. When interviewed about why he played Ezreal and awesome dudes like Vladimir and Yasuo, he said, well, I just think of Ezreal as a spellcaster, a mage in the bot lane that goes down the AD tree. This Misfortune is the prototype of just that thought process.
Yeah, exactly that. Currently playing it a little bit like support Misfortune of old. If you hadn't been, if you haven't seen too much Misfortune since she was popular, that was exactly the Misfortune that we were seeing. An exhaust going to be picked up by Kuro here. Always feels like an all-in when you see a summon a spell. God, I hate Zoe. Very frustrating.
You and everyone else, Atlas.
Yeah, that's true. But I hate her for different reasons. I think that she's fine. I just, I struggle to work out exactly what she's trying to do, and there's just so many summoners going everywhere.
Predator junglers on both sides. I think Spirit caused a lot of people to reevaluate the choice of Electrocute and Predator. You might think, oh, but wasn't it nerfed? But remember, we're still on 8.15 in competitive play. EULCS was also on 8.15 this weekend. So the bigger takeaway there is that Predator and your ability to have huge gank pressure is being preferred to Electrocute on a lot of junglers. The Olaf always love Predator, and speaking of Predator Olaf.
Yep, you're going to have the headbutt moving Tucson back as well. Spirit's Refuge not going to provide nearly enough, as he's not even going to find any taunts here as Viper. The auto attack not going to be there. He wanted to flash, but he didn't have any mana available. Walks over. The control ward does Tucson, and Chovy was back in base, so he's still going to be able to make his way out.
That ramping up auto attack damage not there from the Misfortune, so final auto onto a target already marked doesn't do enough damage. Frustrating from Griffin. The gank path, the gank timing was perfect, but Orianna in base buying the double dank seals means she's not there to clean it up. They get a lot of time wasted from Afreeca's duo, but Spirit can come in and push in the wave, and they don't even get the preferential lane back either.
Yeah, Chovy, that's a lot of Dark Seals. Yeah. Really wants to get as much value out of his Corrupting Potion. It's
also the most lane presence early, and the worry is that Orianna, who does do well in trades at level 7 to 9 against a Zoe, if she doesn't get hit by Trouble Bubble, might just find Quinn in her lane 3 times and lose the turret anyway. So once again, the maximum amount of healing and also just oomph, 200 extra mana, a bit of extra ability power. It's basically saying, I don't want to be pushed out, and then Quinn comes and takes my turret.
Well, Quinn at the moment is going to be going home. Tarzan was thinking about trying to grab a gank up there, but Keen says nope. He's hit level 6. He can utilize his birdie form. And can just head back towards that top side all too easily. Viper happily farming here towards the bottom side as well as Lehen's just setting up shop, wanting to deny Kramer as many minions as possible. Difficult to do when Piercing Arrow is going to be there to take a lot of them down.
That's probably why you were so surprised to see the Shen Varus as the final answer, because the Varus part, understandable, was a prize taken before Misfortune. Shen is also someone who really can only taunt. That's his only real lane function apart from a Smart Spirit's Refuge at times. So he kind of just gets hit by Qs by Misfortune quite a lot. Doesn't really have a lot of lane presence here. So it does double down on how much presence Griffin have. Not often is Alistair seen on the winning side of a 2v2, but is seen on the winning side of a 2v2 when he's next to Misfortune.
Oh yeah, almost everyone is. In fact, I would have liked Lehens to pick Brand and just gone all in. That lane is repugnant. Spirit looking for a potential gank here. Not a lot of mana on Kuro.